Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video that I personally found very particularly interesting. And before I really get into this video, I did just recently want to state about maybe certain changes or certain videos or maybe certain content that I may be releasing on my channel. I may put out certain polls or I may overall put out certain questions or certain things, or I may start doing YouTube shorts or create an Instagram page, whatever it may be, overall to promote my YouTube channel a little bit more. We'll see overall how that works. I would kind of need to figure out myself how to necessarily do that in the corrective ways. But overall, possibly I may do that. So if any of you, of course, are interested in that, certainly be on the lookout overall for that, or certainly let me know. But anyways, I thought all in all that I would review this little video by the boxing channel named AKHi TV. And the reason why I thought that I would review this is because I thought that it was going to be a very particularly interesting topic. Of course, AKHi TV, from what we know, he is not the biggest of Canelo Alvarez fans, at least when it comes to talking positive about him. Of course, overall, he does not like Canelo. Pretty much anyone within the LDBC and new media community, they are not big fans of Canelo because basically what their main objective with Canelo Alvarez is to try and expose him as a charlatan. They're basically trying to expose him as someone who was always massively overrated and someone that never truly deserved to be the number one pound for pound fighter. I, of course, have heavily disagreed with this overall for a very decently long time, and the reason why that is because, once again, I think that if you know anything about boxing, you can basically tell overall very clearly that Canelo Alvarez, that he very clearly is a great boxer. And not just a great boxer, but in my opinion, an all-time great boxer. And I always say this, there's no way that you can have Danny Jacobs and Gennady Golovkin and Sergey Kovalev and Miguel Cotto and Saunders and Caleb Plant and Callum Smith and Gennady Golovkin and Ersan Ilara and Austin Trout. There's no way that you can have all those names on your resume. And even if you want to include a couple of others like Chavez Jr. and maybe some others, there's no way that you can have all those guys on your record and not be a great fighter. And not even just that, an all-time great fighter. It's very clear that Canelo, that he's very clearly a great fighter. There's no doubt about it. But anyways, AKHi TV, I thought that his perspective was particularly interesting. A lot of the times, especially when you're a fan of somebody in the sport or overall, you have that fanboy mentality. A lot of the times, all in all, you'll make a lot of excuses, even if they don't seem viable, for your favorite athletes to maybe why they lost a series or why they lost a game, why they lost a match, or, just lose overall in the big situation. And overall, on the opposite end of the spectrum, with certain athletes that you root against or certain athletes on the know that you tend to hate, there is no possible viable excuses for them, even when it sometimes seems that there are certain viable reasons to maybe why the outcome occurred. And basically, what I mean by that is that whenever it comes to a certain fighter of AKHi TV's liking, like that of a Deontay Wilder, he has no problem with making several excuses, which is exactly what the LDBC and new media did when Deontay Wilder ended up losing to that of a Tyson Fury. But then when it comes to a Canelo Alvarez and when he ends up losing a fight, there is no possible excuses for him. He lost because he was not the same amount of skill and, all this other stuff. And don't get me wrong, are they maybe correct to a degree? Maybe to a degree. But once again, it shows you overall AKHi TV and a lot of these other channels, they're really nothing overall than just your average boxing fanboy. That's really all they are. They're just on a different type of perspective. It just is what it is. That's all they are. That's all they are. But anyways, AKHi TV, he's going to be talking about Canelo Alvarez and the alleged excuse overall that Canelo Alvarez has with having the size disadvantage against Bivol. And that, of course, is not the only thing that Canelo has said. He, of course, stated that, he was not able to train the same because of his callous injury to his hand. Whether that's a real thing or not, who knows? I do believe, of course, that he had calluses on his hand. Do I believe that that's the main reason why he lost? No, I do not. I think that the main reason why Canelo Alvarez lost was because his stamina was absolutely awful. And I stated this after my review overall during that fight. I said that his stamina was god awful. I thought that it was a very poor performance in Canelo Alvarez's career. And even with that, I still gave him about 3 or 4 rounds in the fight. But it was very clear that he lost to Dimitri Bivol. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So if Canelo Alvarez is potentially going to defeat Mr. Dimitri Bivol, he is going to have to be decently realistic. And I don't think that Canelo is really coming across to me, in my opinion, as super delusional when it comes down to it. There is a couple of excuses that, in my opinion, that I would not see as viable. But I think that Canelo Alvarez knows that he knows he's going to have to come into this fight as a different fighter. And he also knows that Dimitri Bivol, that this dude is no joke and that this is probably going to be the biggest match in his career. So I think that Canelo is somewhat prepared overall what he needs to do against Dimitri Bivol. Now the question will be, will it be enough? I'm not necessarily so sure about that at the current moment in time, just because of the size combined with the skill set, and on top of that, with the confidence that Dimitri Bivol is probably now going to have over Canelo Alvarez, not only with his recent win over Canelo, but also against Gilberto Soto Ramirez. I think that it's going to be a very, very, very tough and tall task for Canelo to possibly beat Dimitri Bivol in the rematch. I'm not going to claim that it's impossible, because once again, I think that Canelo Alvarez, that he's one of the best and most skilled fighters on the planet. But at the end of the day, it is going to be very, very difficult. If I were going to compare this fight, necessarily to something, I mean, well, I don't know really what I could compare it to. But Canelo Alvarez, once again, he is going to be the smaller man of the two. And on top of that, he's in there with an opponent that pretty much overall with his same boxing intellect and somewhat of very similar boxing skills, or what I'll say is this, at least very competitively. A lot of the times when Canelo gets in the ring, even when he does get into the ring with certain A-grade level fighters, even if he were to get into a ring overall with Demetrius Andrade and David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo, a lot of people claim that they want to see those fights. I've never personally seen any of those boxers on the same level as a Canelo, really not even close. But Dimitri Bivol, when you talk about his boxing IQ and his boxing skills, there's a reason why I said a very long time ago that Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol, those are really the only two fighters that, in my opinion, really have a realistic chance over Canelo Alvarez, and I pretty much was proven correct in that regard. So it is what it is. And Dimitri Bivol, in my opinion, has the perfect type of style to beat someone like a Canelo. He is great on the front foot. He's great on the back foot. He has excellent defense. He has excellent boxing IQ. He has good and fast feet. When it comes down to it, he's a little bit bigger than Canelo. And on top of that, he has a great athleticism. He's not afraid to mix it up with you. So Canelo, once again, this is going to be a very tough task for Canelo. If Canelo, once again, is actually able to beat Dimitri Bivol, that would be one hell of a statement in his career. It probably would be the biggest one of his career, even bigger than the Gennady Golovkin, Danny Jacob, Araceli Lara wins. But anyway, let's continue onwards. Let's see what Mr. AKHi TV has to say. For those of you actually that did not notice, when you actually take a look at a certain amount of the punches that were thrown by Dimitri Bivol in that little clip there, a lot of the punches actually by Dimitri Bivol that were thrown really were not even landing that flush. And that shows you once again that even a Canelo Alvarez that is completely drained of stamina, and once again, certain people may see that as an excuse. I don't really think it's an excuse overall if you can clearly see that something happened with the stamina, and it was very clear that Canelo, that his stamina was completely drained after round 4. It just is what it is. But even with that, Canelo Alvarez a lot of the times was rolling very well with the punches. He moves out of the way of punches very, very well. And his defense is A-grade. There's no doubt about it. But even in this fight, it was very hard for him to keep his hands up because his stamina was so shot. And if you've ever boxed before, if you don't have great conditioning, if you don't have great stamina, a lot of the times certain fighters don't like to keep their hands up because it costs them more stamina, or they may not be overall necessarily A-grade in the conditioning compartment. So it is what it is. Anyway.
So recently, Missy new bodyguard Bivol, he came out stating that he want to fight Canelo Alvarez at 168 pounds because he's tired of Canelo excuses and he wants to debunk them. Check it out.
What about Canelo?
Well, first of all, overall, when it comes down to it, I think what AKHi TV was actually trying to say is Lionel Messi. I don't believe that's pronounced Messi. Now, overall, I'm not necessarily a Spanish descent or anything like that. I'm not from Argentina, so I can't necessarily claim that. But of course, actually, Lionel Messi, I believe that he's actually of Italian descent. He's actually what would be known as a Caucasian Hispanic, and a lot of people may not know that, but that's where his family lineage is. I believe also part Spaniard as well, but mainly a Caucasoid, a Hispanic Caucasian. But Lionel Messi, when it came down to it, for those of you that don't know overall the situation of why Canelo Alvarez threatened Lionel Messi, or at least overall was a little bit agitated with him, was because after Lionel Messi, I believe in the first round of the World Cup, after they ended up beating the country of Mexico, I believe 2-0 or something like that, Lionel Messi overall was footaged overall, or he was filmed by stomping or stepping on the Mexican jerseys, which of course is a big sign of disrespect, of course, in a FIFA World Cup. Now, some people may not see it as that big of a deal, but I can certainly understand why Canelo took that as, excuse me, as a big sign of disrespect. So a lot of people, of course, they may not know what the situation is about, but that's the reason, why that happened. And it's no offense against Lionel Messi, but with his no World Cup winning ass, he really should calm down about beating a team that I don't even know has ever even won a World Cup personally. I'm not sure if Mexico has ever won a FIFA World Cup personally. But Lionel Messi needs to worry about winning the World Cup because he really overall, besides that 1 year in 2014, him and Cristiano Ronaldo, they've really never even been close to overall winning a World Cup. But anyway.
Had the options for rematch. He didn't use it. He gonna fight again against someone. Not if he wants, he could fight me. He could fight with me, but he could it before, and he could make it in the May.
Do you call the shots now if it's a 168 or 175? If Canelo does want to take that rematch?
Why not? It's 168. It's good. If 168, it's no excuses anymore. Some excuses. Yeah, I heard some excuses. He said that it's not his weight classes, and then he said that he didn't get a good training camp, and then he said that he was a problem with the arm.
So 168 will leave no doubt.
Yeah, it will be great. 168. It's no excuses.
Would you?
So Canelo Alvarez wants to fight Missy. But Canelo, what you gonna do when Missy new bodyguard come for...
Once again, I think you mean Lionel Messi. Well, AKHi TV, for allegedly being this professional reporter, he gets so many damn names wrong, especially with their pronunciations. And listen, you don't necessarily have to be a soccer expert to know who Lionel Messi is. Like, come on, you don't know how to pronounce, Messi's name? Like, come on. Now, maybe I'm the one that's wrong. Maybe I'm the jackass. I don't know. But I believe that it's pronounced Lionel Messi. Anyway.
Are you going to be a good boy or a bad boy? Well, we already got the answer to that because when Bivol came for Canelo, what Canelo Alvarez did, like Bivol pointed out, he disactivated his rematch clause. Then he made a bunch of excuses after Canelo said he's not going to make any excuses. To make matters worse, Canelo even claimed he beat Bivol when they first fought. I mean, the level of...
And I do have to agree with AKHi TV slightly there. Now, don't get me wrong. The size very clearly is going to be an advantage for Dimitri Bivol. And some people are going to say, oh, no, well, why would you say that? And AKHi is going to bring this point up later because Canelo overall, he's been outsized before. Why all of a sudden is it a problem with Bivol? Well, the answer is very clear to that. Overall, it's that Dimitri Bivol, that he's just a different level of fighter that Canelo is usually, used to facing. And Canelo's fought a lot of A-grade level fighters. But Dimitri Bivol, overall, with his type of style and combined with the size, is just going to be very difficult for Canelo to win a fight like that really in the first place. And there's really no other fighter that I see when you compare overall anyone else. Like apparently Jamal Charlo allegedly called out Dimitri Bivol. We all know overall that Jamal Charlo would never go towards Dimitri Bivol with the 10-foot pole. He's full of shit. He's been full of shit for the majority of his career with taking big fights. I don't believe him. I've never believed him. Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez, Andre, none of those other guys, Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, none of those guys, in my opinion, really would even stand a chance against someone like a Dimitri Bivol. Not only because of the size and the weight and the athleticism of Dimitri Bivol, but you also, of course, got to combine the skill set. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Delusion by Canelo Alvarez is unmatched at this point in time. But the fact that Canelo...
Actually, no. The one fighter all in all with their delusion that is actually unmatched and always will be is Mr. Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder. I don't think that I've seen as many excuses come out of a fighter's mouth, and really dipshit excuses, dumbass excuses, Neanderthal type of excuses at that, when it comes down to it, to why he ended up losing a fight. All the way to overall, I was drugged overall. My trainer was in on it when it came down to it. They're both from Detroit, so that's why they threw in the towel. Oh, he put egg weights in the gloves. oh, he took padding out, oh, his hand was lower into the glove. I don't think I've ever seen the type of excuses that I've seen from the Deontay Wilder fans and the Deontay Wilder camp that I've seen from any other fighter. And don't get me wrong, I've seen a bunch of stupid ass excuses. I've seen Manny Pacquiao give some doozies. I've seen there be some other, excuses overall throughout their career. I've definitely seen some good excuses or some crazy excuses. I don't think I've ever seen one quite as wild as the Deontay Wilder fan base and the Deontay Wilder camp. But anyway, and don't get me wrong, Canelo is making some excuses, in my opinion, that are not as valid as what he's trying to make them off. I don't think, all in all, that the callus on your hand, I don't think overall that it was that big of a difference maker, because if you truly thought it was, overall, then you would have had surgery on it earlier. But I do think at this point that Canelo, that he's maybe thinking it's a possible superstition, and that overall to beat Dimitri Bivol, he'll have to get that taken care of so he feels a little bit reborn in a way, or at least remade, almost a better version. So we'll see what happens.
Alvarez claims 168 pounds is his best division. Then he proceeded to turn down Bivol rematch at 168. That further exposed and debunked Canelo Alvarez weight excuses, which we already knew what time it is. Canelo never complained about Caleb Smith, Rocky Fielding, Kovalev, and Chavez Jr.'s size advantage, when they in fact bigger than Bivol. However, all of a sudden,
No, they're not bigger than Dimitri Bivol, and that's how idiotic this dude is. Whether he actually believes in a lot of the stuff that he's saying or not. There's a difference between just being taller than a fighter and being taller and overall clearly girthier or thicker overall than the average fighter that they're used to. Once again, certain people that have sparred Dimitri Bivol, like a David Benavidez, they said that Dimitri Bivol has A-grade level power, that he has Gennady Golovkin type of power. And I had certain people overall come into my comment section, then they disagreed with me, and they tried to say overall, oh, well, he hasn't got it great. He hasn't got that many knockouts as of late. Right, but just because the fighter, all in all, doesn't get a series of knockouts doesn't always mean that they don't have decent power. When you take a look at Dimitri Bivol in every fight that he's fought, even against natural light heavyweights or against Gilberto Zeta Ramirez, that cruiserweight, damn near heavyweight in that fight, he was able to back up Gilberto Zeta Ramirez the whole entire time. You don't do that against someone like against Gilberto Zeta Ramirez unless you have very, very, very good power. And Dimitri Bivol has very, very good power. He also has very good speed. But Dimitri Bivol is not only taller and lengthier than Canelo, he's thicker and bigger than Canelo. It just is what it is. He is a natural 175-pounder, or at least around there. Now, in my opinion, would I rather see the fight at 168? Not really. I think all in all that 175 more than likely is the best way to do it. At least overall, if you're Canelo's promoter, more than likely overall, it would work better at 175. Now, maybe for Dimitri Bivol, it would work better at 168, and maybe he could dictate something there, but I just don't think the fight really has as much appeal. And the reason why I say that is because, of course, a certain amount of the appeal, is going to be possibly if Canelo Alvarez can make history and if he's able to avenge the match at 175 pounds. I think that if it happens at 168 pounds, that if you're Canelo Alvarez's promoter, or if you're Eddie Hearn, you not only take the risk of it looking worse on Canelo because now he lost to Dimitri Bivol in his alleged best weight class, but on top of that, when it comes down to it, if he does end up winning the Dimitri Bivol rematch at 168 pounds, there's just going to be a lot of people that are stating, well, you beat a Dimitri Bivol that was drained, that really wasn't in his natural weight division anyway, so it really doesn't mean that much. So I think that it's just best overall to have the rematch at 175 pounds. I think that is the best way to do it, in my view. But I wouldn't mind seeing the fight at 168. It's not that I'm super against it. I just think that it's better at 175, in my view. But anyway.
when it came to Bivol, who is smaller than them and weighted the same as Canelo on fight night, now Canelo want to make up a size excuse.
Well, it's not really a size excuse. Canelo Alvarez is very clearly smaller than Dimitri Bivol. He added on some extra muscle mass, which was a very, very big mistake. But Canelo, once again, he's about 5'9" with a 71-inch reach. Dimitri Bivol is about 5'11" to 6 foot with a 73 or 74-inch reach. So once again, and on top of that, he's clearly thicker. It just is what it is. I don't think that the size excuse is really that much of an excuse when you can see that there's a little bit of reality there. And keep in mind that AKHi TV and Dante's Boxing Nation, all these same guys that are claiming that Canelo was making a size excuse, these are the same exact guys that for Deontay Wilder, when it came to a fighter that they liked, They all said that, well, why are we giving Tyson Fury that much credit? Because Fury weighs about 40, 50 pounds heavier than Deontay Wilder. Now, even though that is a little bit of truth, and a lot of people overall may say, well, that's actually a good point. Why would you overall not give Deontay Wilder the same leeway that you would give Canelo? Because once again, there's a difference overall between being outweighed by a fighter, but you two very clearly are somewhat on an even playing field because you may have similar power levels or there's certain advantages that you can utilize even if you do weigh less. But Canelo, when it comes down to it, once again, there's just almost nothing in terms of his physicality that he can really utilize over Dimitri Bivol. He's not really more powerful than Dimitri Bivol. Dimitri Bivol also has great speed. Dimitri Bivol is thicker and bigger than Canelo Alvarez. Dimitri Bivol is taller. He's lengthier. There's really nothing overall that he can truly utilize. When it comes to Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, at least you can say that they're somewhat comparable. And on top of that, Deontay Wilder is supposed to be the biggest puncher in all of boxing. So that to me, even though if you wanted to state that clearly the weight was an advantage for Tyson Fury, I really don't have a problem with that. But to state that that is the main reason why Deontay Wilder lost, no, the main reason why Deontay Wilder lost is because he did not have the boxing skill of a Tyson Fury. Now, some may say, well, why are you also not saying the same thing with Bivol? Well, I think a part of the reason why Canelo lost to Dimitri Bivol is because of Dimitri Bivol's skill set. But when you take a look at Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, if you're a guy like Deontay Wilder, and if you truly have great boxing skills, and if you have this one-shot knockout power that has been proven to knock out pretty much every opponent that you've been in the ring with in the past, the difference maker has to be the skill set, because unless Tyson Fury is able to weigh on you or unless he's able to hit you repeatedly, which allegedly, according to AKHi TV and Dante's Boxing Nation and these other guys, apparently Tyson Fury has pillow hands. Apparently he can't punch. So why would the weight overall really matter that much? Because the weight is really going to mainly matter, especially mainly in the punching power. That's what it's usually going to matter in. And so once again, overall, their excuse wouldn't even make sense by a lot of the shit that they were saying. But once again, it is very clear that in the Tyson Fury fight, the weight was an advantage for Tyson Fury, but it wasn't as much of a factor overall as what the Deontay Wilder fans were trying to say. Whereas this, for example, in my opinion, because Canelo, you can very clearly tell that he's probably around a natural middleweight, maybe a little bit heavier than that, that this is clearly overall going to be a very tough fight for him. It just is what it is. Even when he's in the ring with Caleb Plant and Danny Jacobs or against Jamal Charlo, if he were in the ring with any of those guys, he's not as big or as lengthy or as tall as any of those guys. None of them. It just is what it is. I don't think that it's really an excuse to say that. I just think that it's reality. Now, of course, it would be an excuse if Canelo ended up losing every single one of those fights and we would say, oh, well, it's not his fault because he's clearly smaller than those guys. Well, if you're supposed to be the number one pound for pound fighter, you got to pull through the majority of those fights, if not every single one of them. So Canelo is going to have to defeat Dimitri Bivol in a rematch if he is going to regain the number one pound for pound spot.
Last time I checked, size do not win fights, skills do. And Bivol proved that against...
Well, Aki, I don't necessarily have a problem with you somewhat saying that, but we all know when it comes to a fighter that you like or that you're trying to tear down, your overall, you're going to completely throw that, same argument that you just said out the window. Because once again, we all know what Deontay Wilder did. You were claiming that Tyson Fury was too big, even though allegedly you said that he couldn't punch, but, it is what it is. And you also said the same thing with Lomachenko when he beat Rigondeaux, which I would agree to a degree because it was very clear that Loma was bigger than Rigondeaux. It just is what it is. But once again, I don't think that it's really that much of an excuse. I just think that it's a little bit of reality. A big part of the reason why Canelo, overall, why maybe certain people, they would not claim overall to have as much problems, maybe with a Callum Smith or some other guys, is because overall, those guys very clearly don't have the same skill sets as Dimitri Bivol. So once again, Aki is not completely incorrect overall about that statement. But once again, when it comes down to it, needs to be put in a little bit of context.
Ramirez. Gilberto Ramirez was like 209 when he fought Bivol, while Bivol was 189 or 187. Gilberto Ramirez had more than 20 pounds size advantage, and it did not do anything for him.
Right, but let's not overall state that that's just the same thing overall in every fight. The reason why Dimitri Bivol overall ended up winning the way that he did over Gilberto Ramirez is because Zerda was much more limited than that of a Dimitri Bivol. But all of a sudden, if you put Dimitri Bivol in there with an Alexander Usyk, someone who's a natural cruiserweight, just like Alberto Zeta Ramirez, all of a sudden the odds and all of a sudden the context, it changes completely. Because you're talking about a fighter that is just as skilled, if not even more skilled, as Dimitri Bivol, but now he's also going to have that clear 20-pound weight advantage. That's overall when the weight needs to be discussed. And a lot of people overall don't need, they don't really understand that. AKHi is such an idiot that he doesn't really know how to put certain things into context. But it is what it is. Of course, there is a difference between Canelo versus Callum Smith. Of course, and, him and Dimitri Bivol. Of course, Dimitri Bivol, it's very clear that he's more skilled than Callum Smith. But also the size is still there. I don't think that there's any point denying it. It just is what it is.
Results was still the same because skills pay the bills, not weight. Like I said before.
Well, listen, skills do pay the bills at the end of the day, but weight is something that is an important factor. I don't think that there's any debate about that. It just is what it is. It just is what it is. And especially when you have the skill set combined with the weight, it's going to be very hard overall for that opponent overall to beat them. But once again, Canelo, in my opinion, if he is going to regain that number one pound per pound spot, he is overall going to have to beat Dimitri Bivol in the rematch.
Bivol is a small 175-pounder. He's not really a light heavyweight. If you noticed, when Jamal Charlo was calling out Bivol face-to-face, Jamal Charlo is a 160-pounder. And he looked...
Well, Jamal Charlo very clearly could go up to 168 pounds, but it's no offense against Jamal Charlo, but Jamal Charlo, once again, he's been barking a lot throughout his career, but I've never really been overtly impressed with him. And I really need to see him in the ring with a guy that I think can somewhat handle his skill set. Really, the only fighter that I've ever really seen him in the ring with that I ever thought that was a decent challenge was when Julian J. Rock Williams was undefeated. And good on him, he ended up winning that fight, even though it was very tough and competitive. Do I think that Jamal Charlo would beat Dimitri Bivol? No. I don't think he would even have a slight chance.
Bigger than Bivol, which that further exposes Canelo Alvarez's weight excuse.
Well, right, but if you also put Jamal Charlo and Dimitri Bivol in the ring with each other, Jamal Charlo may be about the same height as Dimitri Bivol, but when you talk about the thickness and the girth, it would be very clear and very apparent who is the bigger of the two. Okay, remember, David Benavidez and Dimitri Bivol, they used to spar with each other a decent amount of the time. They're both around the same size. So when it comes down to it, and David Benavidez, in my opinion, is a natural 175-pounder. And these guys would claim that David Benavidez is bigger than that of a Jamal Charlo, and they would be correct. But at the end of the day, once again, let's not sit here and say that size has nothing to do with it. Now, of course, is skills a big part of the reason why Canelo lost? Yes, of course. But size, of course, is going to be a little bit overall of the factor. But the reason why they want to make it seem like the size really isn't a factor is because, once again, they want to make Canelo come across as a charlatan, as a fake fighter.
If you are a true pound-for-pound fighter, size do not win fights. Skills do. Floyd Mayweather will tell you that, and he proved that by moving up 5 weight divisions. And size never made a difference. The fact that Canelo...
Right, you know what? But let me also mention this about Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Oscar De La Hoya and certain fighters that moved up several weight classes, because this is something that a lot of people don't mention. And it's also the same thing with Terrence Bud Crawford. And Canelo Alvarez, he did this overall to a degree when it came down to it. Most of these fighters that are moving up in weight, a lot of the times the first 1 or 2 weight classes that they're really at, that's not really their natural weight class, or they end up eventually growing out of there. And that's what a lot of people really don't mention. Floyd Mayweather Jr., when you take a look at his build, I'm not really going to claim that he's a natural welterweight because he rehydrated at around 150 pounds or somewhere around there. But at the end of the day, Floyd Mayweather Jr. was also a dude that was about 5'8" with a 72-inch arm reach. And on top of that, his weight, he probably was somewhere around a natural 140-pounder. Like when you take a look at Floyd versus Shane Mosley, or Floyd overall versus Manny Pacquiao, Floyd versus Marquez, Floyd versus Ricky Hatton, even Floyd against Canelo. Now, Canelo very clearly was heavier than Floyd Mayweather Jr., but 99% of the fights in Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s career, people always say all in all that, the opponent has to be this much bigger. Well, they were somewhat bigger in terms of weight, but in terms of the height and reach, overall, Floyd was never really outreached in his career other than that of the Oscar De La Hoya fight and maybe the Diego Corrales fight. Other than that, he was never really overall majorly outsized. It just is what it is. And a lot of people may disagree with me on that. Listen, it just is what it is. You can't sit here and tell me that when he fought Ricky Hatton or Shane Mosley or a certain amount of these other guys, that they were just that much bigger than him. And even if overall they did have 10, possibly even 15 or 20 pounds on him, which really, now that I think about it, which fighter specifically really had 20 pounds over Floyd Mayweather Jr.? That's something that I really need to know. Which fighter specifically had 20 pounds over him? Because maybe Canelo Alvarez, maybe that one overall, and I heard about Victor Ortiz, maybe De La Hoya. Other than that, there really was no fighters that were 20 pounds bigger than Floyd Mayweather Jr. None. People try to say Miguel Cotto, but Miguel Cotto at his heaviest usually rehydrated at around 160 pounds. So that really doesn't make any sense. It just is what it is. And this is not me trying to degrade Floyd Mayweather Jr. I think that Floyd is debatably the greatest fighter that I've ever seen. But at the end of the day, once again, let's not sit here and act like Floyd Mayweather Jr. was in there and that he was clearly outsized overall in every single category. A big part of the reason of Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s success was the fact that he was 5'8" and had a 72-inch arm reach. So the first couple of weight classes that he was at, he pretty much was bigger than a majority of the guys overall than what were at that weight class. It just is what it is. At least overall had the longer reach.
Alvarez was 15 pounds naturally bigger than Floyd on fight night. Did not save Canelo. It did not grant Canelo the win against Floyd. In fact,
well, right, but the reason why Floyd Mayweather Jr. ended up beating Canelo is because his boxing IQ is that much higher usually than any of the opponents that he's facing. The thing is with Canelo and Dimitri Bivol is that their boxing IQ is very, very particularly similar. And on top of that, Dimitri Bivol has the size advantage. And that's, AKHi's probably too stupid to understand that, but it just is what it is. Anyway.
It was the contrary. The little old Floyd, who was 36 years old, smashed Canelo instead because skills pay the bills. And just like Canelo never wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather again, just like he does not want to fight Bivol again. We all know Canelo only started clout chasing Floyd Mayweather after he retired. 2 years after he retired, Canelo started acting like he wanted the rematch, when in all reality, Canelo never wanted the Floyd Mayweather rematch when Floyd Mayweather was still active. They say history repeats itself, and now Canelo is doing the same thing with Bivol. With the facts...
No, all Canelo Alvarez is doing is that he's taking his time and taking a tune-up, which, once again, overall is a little bit commendable. I really don't have a problem with that. And like I say, when you get your ass whooped the way that Canelo did against Bivol or the way that Wilder did against Fury, you overall have to do that. You have to take a tune-up. And the reason why that is to make yourself a little bit new. You have to make yourself a better fighter. Sometimes when we take an ass whooping, we have to take a look at that and say, you know what? Why did that happen? We have to reflect. We have to learn from our experience, because if you just go in there into the same situation, even though many times our pride overall will tell us to do that, it a lot of the times can be our downfall. Or at least can result in the same exact mistake as last time.
Now, what is your thoughts on Bivol wanting to fight Canelo Alvarez at 168 pounds in order to debunk all of his excuses? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe below and click on the notification bell to be continued on the next episode of AKHi TV.
But anyways, that's way better for today. I just thought that I would talk about that. But once again, this is going to be a very big indicator in Canelo Alvarez's career. It's going to be very particularly interesting. So I thought overall that we would review it. I thought it was very interesting. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.